we're going to talk about like a big power solar flash, whatever, and like power grids going down, you're going to need a big sunspot. And we'll see that right now. We have the technology where we can like track these things on the far side of the sun. And even back during the 1800s, some sunspots are big enough you can see them with the naked eye. Like we have a lot of sunspots on the sun right now. And if you go out and you're able to watch the sun right at the horizon, like I'm in San Diego, so I see the sun set over the water. There's no obstructions at the very end. You can see the sunspots. And even better, if you have eclipse glasses, you will see those sunspots if they're big enough. If they're tiny, you won't see them. But if they're big mama size, you will see them.
I'm very pleased to bring you Stefan Burns. Stefan is a geophysicist turned YouTuber who analyzes the current energies and educates others on how they may best be navigated for maximum soul growth and spiritual development. He recently launched his Planetary Resonances e-course to help others better feel and understand the energetic qualities of the background cosmic morphic field. You can watch his video on YouTube, and I will link that down below. So if you want to find it, you can just quickly click in the video description and find it to learn more about the Planetary Resonances e-course. You can also find it at his website, Wild Free Organic, and I'll also include that link. Stefan, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invite and for bringing me into your space. And I don't know what we're going to talk about today, because you said this is going to be organic and free form, which is what I like, because sometimes you can have a list of questions. That's good, but you can go to more interesting places when you just feel it out. So
Yeah, we'll see where we go. You are a geophysicist turned YouTuber, and you talk about these kind of planetary energies and solar energies. What made you become interested in this and connecting it to kind of the spiritual side?
well, I'll keep it brief because sometimes people do these like soliloquies and it's like half the podcast. But I mean, if we go back really like when I was a kid, I've always loved connecting with nature. Anytime we did like outings for Boy Scouts, I loved it. And then, I mean, I even bought like a book when I was a teenager. I just asked my mom to try to find it up in the attic to ship it to me. It was called Druid Power. Like I'm like 12 or 13 buying this book on druids and stuff and magic. And I want to read it again now because I didn't finish it when I was 12 or 13, whatever age. But then I went to school and for geology and got my degree in geology. I had a lot of really interesting like dream experiences as a kid, but I also just drank normal water and ate normal food and everything. I think that kind of closed my pineal gland until spirit like woke me up on purpose. Like it finally kind of intervened and like shook me. And so then I switched to things like spring water and the pineal gland opened back up and my dream abilities come back. And I've had a ton of synchronicities in the past 4 years and interesting like precognition dreams and some like kind of psychic stuff, though I'm not by any means like a psychic person. Like, like someone that's really, really in this. But there was just too many things leading me in that direction. I went to school for geology, learned about the earth, and then went into the field as a geophysicist. And so was working with doing a lot of field work and actually collecting measurements on Earth's geophysical properties. This could be like the electric field, magnetic field, using ground penetrating radar to see what's underground, seismic waves, understanding seismicity and such, and just building up like a foundation there. And I've always had a really big curiosity. So I just always go different areas, have tons of interest, biology, all this stuff. And so I stumbled upon the Schumann resonances, which I'm sure a lot of your audience is aware of, these naturally resonant energy fields for the Earth everywhere. And I stumbled upon them because at my old job, we have a bunch of different pieces of equipment that they manufactured. One of them is magnetotelluric devices. Basically what it means is you put these steel probes in the ground and you measure the electrical waves. They're called telluric currents. You measure the electrical currents of the ground. And they have different frequencies to them. Some of them are very low frequency, they pulse very slowly. Some are high frequency, they pulse faster. And you can use these magnetotellurics to basically look for water or ore deposits, things of this nature. And so we were setting it up in the field, and I noticed these peaks on them on the readout. I was like, what is that? He's like, oh, those are just the Schumann resonances. This is my coworker who's like 85. He's seen everything. It's like, don't worry about them. We're not interested in them. But I thought it was really odd because they're like these natural energy spikes that exist. And so I started reading about them, and I decided to make a video on them. I had made one other YouTube video before on gardening, and I made like a 6-minute documentary kind of style video on the Schumann resonances. I released it on February 14th of 2021. And Spirit was definitely guiding me in that, because then 4 months later, all of a sudden the video blew up and was getting regular views through search on YouTube. And I kept getting Spirit basically saying, you need to study these, you need to do more stuff with these, make more videos, everything. Like there was some fascination there. I mean, I have my own curiosity, but Spirit was like funneling me there too. And so once that video started to do well, and then other videos did well on Schumann resonances, I kind of blew up. I was like, this is, I kind of like this. And I saw the potential of it. I wanted to be able to travel and have freedom of time, money, and location. And so I really built the YouTube, and I dropped my normal job, and now here we are.
So you almost had, or you actually did have like a calling of sorts, that Spirit called you to this work to share with others what's happening with the sun and the earth right now.
Yeah, exactly. And now that I've really started to incorporate astrology into kind of my worldview and my understanding, there's always more to learn. But 5 years ago, I didn't know anything other than I was a Virgo sun, right? But now I have this course, the Planetary Resonances course, where you can study these astrological cycles from a scientific, from a mythological, from an astrological perspective, all three, like the natural philosophers did. Once I studied astrology, then it all made sense with my transition into YouTube and this whole field, because back in 2020, Jupiter and Saturn met in a great conjunction. This was winter solstice, so December 21st, 2020, at 0 degrees of Aquarius. This is Western tropical astrology. Guess what I have at 0 degrees of Aquarius? I have my midheaven and my Saturn. And midheaven is your public persona, and it's the top of your chart. It's like what you radiate out for the world, for everyone. And so I had them meet December 21st, 2020, right on those two. Saturn brings it into reality, also on my midheaven. And it was basically right at that time that I quit my job and moved into this kind of nomadic digital entrepreneur lifestyle, because I quit my job like in August of 21. So then I really started to build it up well, that was 2020. So yeah, like 9 months afterwards, so excuse me, 9 months after that great conjunction, I stopped that. Then Pluto moved over that point, on it right now, transforming it all and causing all these things. And so now I can look back retroactively and be like, yeah, I guess I was kind of destined for this. So
So the energies of the stars and our solar system and the sun, they really do affect our lives here on Earth. Tell me more about that.
yeah, that's the thing that you can be like conscious of, or you can be unconscious of, and it'll affect you no matter what. Though I do feel like there is free will, of course. I also believe in fate, and I think that free will is kind of like an elastic thing. Like we have these fated paths, and fate wants us to walk along them with free will, and our spirit does. And so if you are not in alignment with spirit, you may really deviate off the path, but eventually that rubber band will pull you back to it. And so it can be really fast transition. Whereas if you're walking that path, then things are much more agreeable and easy. And doesn't mean that there can't be some pretty fated big things in your life, but you won't have this sudden elastic snap back to it. And that will happen multiple times in life for people that aren't, kind of listening to their calling. But these astrological energies, they line up really well with a whole bunch of stuff. And so I think it's also just like when's the right time, like divine timing, that whole concept. Because you may not be destined to do that at that age, but then when the stars align, literally, and you're having all these things hit your different points and just trigger you in a different way, all of a sudden, boom, that metamorphosis completes and you're ready to go, and whatever that is. And so when you study astrology, you can start to see these things a little easier. Doesn't mean they're not going to be unexpected or perhaps surprising, but you can kind of see, oh, wow, I have a huge transit coming up over, let's say, one of your critical angles. And well, that's probably going to be pretty significant. And that's at least what I've seen. I've had a whole bunch of huge transits in the past 4 months on my charts, like nonstop. And I don't know if it's going to end, but it keeps working. So I keep studying it. And yeah, I think some people feel like there's a lack of purpose in their life at times, which leads to a lack of happiness. And so if you want to discover your purpose, one way to do that is to study astrology, because you can better understand yourself. And then you can also get a little glimpse into the timeline of like, okay, maybe this is a good time to do this, or this is what I should be pursuing here. This is a formative time for that. And it just gets you kind of in alignment. So yeah, I think it's very powerful.
And one thing I like about it too is you can kind of prepare yourself for some maybe more troubling or challenging times, and so it doesn't kind of slap you in the face. I've noticed when we have big solar storms, things like that, and I'll watch you to see what's happening because I will experience events. I don't know if events is the right word, but shifts in, I guess, my mood. I can feel it intensely, like maybe some anxiety. And then other times it's very pleasant feelings, nice feelings. And then I'll see a video from you come out because I watch you, I subscribe to you, and I watch your channel all the time. Lots of great information. Um, how does the sun affect us, like these CMEs and like the sunspots and the solar winds? How does that affect us here on Earth?
There's a whole bunch of mechanisms. I like to first bring it back to the fact that without the sun, life as we know it wouldn't really exist. And we have the sun to thank for basically all the energy on our planet. Um, and there's a lot of things that, it's multifactorial for all this stuff, for the weather patterns, climate, for Earth's magnetic field, for the sun itself, all these different things. So much we don't know, right? So let's just put that right out there from the start. Like, what is the sun? What is the sun? The best that we have is like spectrum lines, emission lines. We see that there's like no light at a certain frequency that's associated with certain elements. So like we know the elemental composition and various things, but there's a lot more we don't know than we do know. But the sun is the big energy engine coming in. So when there's variations in solar energy output, that stands to reason that there are variations that we experience here on Earth. And we are really amazing creatures, organisms. I mean, humans especially are very odd. Like, just take the fact that, I'm not a gorilla face. I have hair up here and I have just a little bit of body hair, but, we're not insulated with fur. And so we're very conductive. And so unlike most animals, we are really connected to the earth 24/7, just based on our actual body, physiology, things of that nature. And all the earth energies change with changing solar parameters. So increase in solar wind or solar storm impacts, right? Because there's a lot of sunspots on the sun, for example, or a lot of solar flares have been occurring. That causes the geomagnetic field to kind of rattle around. This is an actual field of force. So force is the ability to do work. Like, I have this bottle here. Imagine it's just like sitting flat and I push on it. I'm exerting force and it's doing work. It's moving the bottle. And so the magnetic field is actual force field. It has an ability to push on things, pull on things, and exert changes as a result. And it's static, basically, but it does have these variations slowly across time. And during a big geomagnetic storm, those variations are much stronger and much more rapid. And so it's pulling and pushing on your cells, on proteins, on different ions in your body, a whole bunch of different things within your body that have charge. are water. Water. Let's talk about water. That's really, really strongly affected by all these different energies. Um, and then you add on the moon and you add on all this stuff and galactic cosmic rays, and it gets wild. And that's where it's really exciting, though, because we have so many of these things that are affecting us, and we have this whole kind of spiritual network, you could say, where people are feeling into it intuitively and doing their best to translate and what they feel into a vocabulary for others. And we're not 100% with that, but we're getting better. But then if you add in some of the scientific stuff, our accuracy goes way up.
Do you think the sun plays any part into this great awakening that everyone's talking about?
That's interesting. There's a few things. I think that there's always a great awakening, right? I think that there's, like, for example, there's been a great awakening happening since like the late 1800s and before that, right? People were writing about this for a long time. And so we can't deny that there's a little bit of a component of collective human ego thinking, well, now it's finally going to happen with us because we're special, right? It's like we are special, but it's been happening forever. But I think it's increasing in frequency. Like, I think it's accelerating, and that's notable. There does seem to be acceleration, and that seems to be driven in part by things like the internet and our ability to now communicate so easily to each other. Because in the background planetary morphic field, we have Neptune and we have Pluto meeting in the sign of Gemini. So they call this a great age of Gemini. This is different than the astrological ages. But Gemini is all about the mind and communication, right? It's ruled by Mercury. And so now that we finally have the tool, the internet, now these realizations of Gemini can finally be unleashed. And I think that's causing a very fast acceleration right now. But it's not like it hasn't happened before, and it's not like awakening is not going to happen in the future, in my opinion. But it does seem to be significant. And then as it relates to the sun, we've had a lot of solar activity in the past. Like during the American Revolution, it was like the strongest solar cycle we've ever recorded back right after World War II. Super strong solar cycle. That was solar cycle 19, I believe. And so this one is notable not because it's super strong like some of these others that were crazy. If you look at the record, it is now returning to the average, but the last solar cycle we were in, solar cycle 24, was anomalously weak. So it's more the difference between them. It's more the fact that solar cycle 24 was ultra weak and we got very sleepy collectively. And now we have more energy coming in compared to that. But it's not like this is the strongest solar cycle in 50,000 years. We just know that's not the case. But it's the difference. And if we continue having them get stronger and stronger, then that's just going to fuel that acceleration that we're feeling and seeing even faster, I believe.
I know there's been some concern with some people that we would get a solar flare so large it's going to knock out our grid. Is that something that can happen? And do you foresee that in our future, if so?
It definitely can happen. I mean, it's good that people study this. I mean, there's different governmental organizations that have, looked at the fallout of what would happen. For example, there was I mean, they've done that for like a pole flip scenario where the magnetic field flips. Once we learn certain things, for example, once we learn that Earth's magnetic field flips, because we started doing magnetic surveys of the coast and the ocean bottom. We saw these polarity reversals. Once we learned that, we were like, well, what would happen if that occurs? And then there's various documents and stuff out there by the governments. And same for like a super flare or a solar flash or whatever you want to call it. There's a whole bunch of different names, but the technical term that they use is super flare. Yeah, it could happen. We see super flare impacts in the record, most recently in 774 AD. So back during the early Middle Ages, there was this big spike in carbon-14, which is very likely from a very significant solar storm impact. And we had the Carrington event. We had in 1989 power grids go out in Quebec because of a big geomagnetic storm. But if we're talking about some sort of like global blackout or something like something that's like significant, like millions and millions and millions of people without power, that would require extraordinary circumstances. And I think half the reason that that's such a big conversation right now is because we are so technologically dependent now versus 100 years ago. And so that conversation is in some sense playing off of the fear of, well, we've grown reliant on this. And so here's what could happen if we get that knocked out. Doesn't mean it's likely though. And my personal opinion is that anyone that's forecasting for that to occur exactly on a certain date or year, or whatever, they're full of it because there's no way to forecast that. As far as I know, I mean, we get that every century, every decade, every year. There's always people telling you stuff, and then history forgets about them. So people forget about those doomsdayers, but it is possible. That's the thing. So they play on that, like they play on the fact that it is possible, and solar activity is going up right now. So it's probably a slightly higher probability now than it was back with solar cycle 24. But I don't have any date that I can give you.
We have a huge solar spot or sunspot, I think.
Big
Sunspot
mama.
coming. Yeah, Big Mama. I watched your video last night where you talking about Big Mama. With its recent activity, are you expecting it to stay active?
It looks pretty significant, and it seems that it's Big Mama that was responsible for that X14 flare, the largest of the solar cycle that occurred. If you want, I can pull up Big Mama behind me. I can download a photo right now from the website, and I can set it as my background.
That would be fun. Yeah, let's
And
do
it should
that.
pop up right over my that way everyone can see Big Mama.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's that. Okay, so if we're going to talk about like a big power solar flash, whatever, and like power grids going down, you're going to need a big sunspot, and we'll see that. Right now, we have the technology where we can like track these things on the far side of the sun, and even back during the 1800s. Some sunspots are big enough you can see them with the naked eye. Like we have a lot of sunspots on the sun right now. And if you go out and you're able to watch the sun right at the horizon, like I'm in San Diego, so I see the sun set over the water. There's no obstructions at the very end. You can see the sunspots. And even better, if you have eclipse glasses, you will see those sunspots if they're big enough. If they're tiny, you won't see them. But if they're Big Mama size, you will see them. And so for something like a solar flash and some mega solar flare, that's basically the first thing that you need is you need some area of open flux. I mean, I haven't read anywhere of just things just erupting from a part of the sun that doesn't have anything expressing itself. So yeah, the fact that we have Big Mama right now on Earth facing side of the sun is heightens that chance a little bit. But is it a high chance overall? I don't think so, but can't rule it out.
Is that the kind
Um,
of size sunspot that could cause something like that? Or would
well,
we
let me
need
get it.
something
Yeah,
even
let me get it up here. That's the thing. It's not just like size related, but that is a big component, and yeah, it's pretty big. So yeah, Big Mama here. Here she is, folks. Okay, that's cool. So that's Big Mama right there. And so quite large. And if I actually go over a little bit here, we see some other sunspots. These are large, spread out, these clusters there. But just, I mean, it's like a different category here, right? These are probably a fourth or a fifth the size, if not more, than Big Mama. And Big Mama's not alone. She has her family and friends and everything. So that's a big sunspot group. That could definitely that could do it. But there's been times that we've seen sunspots in historical record that are like this big, like these monsters, absolute freaks that just go across. And so that is when you should really start being like, okay, let's see what we can do. Is there anything that we need to fix now? Then you should really be concerned. But something like this could launch a very strong flare. This is what launched the X14. If that storm had hit us directly, we don't know. let's say there's a heat wave going through, everyone's running their AC, power grids are already strained to the max, right? And then that thing wallops the earth. Whew, that could be bad.
So we don't need to be scared, just prepared.
Yeah, I think that's
Oh,
a great saying. Don't be scared, but be prepared. Yeah.
yeah, great. And is there such thing? I've heard of earth facing quiet, and
Yeah.
that's where it kind of like there's very active solar spots and solar activity as it's going around, but then once it comes to face Earth, things settle down. Is that true? And if that's true, is there something protecting Earth?
Well, in terms of like what the word true, let's first like zone in there. Uh, I don't know if that's true, but it's an interesting correlation. Like I've heard that phrase before, and I've been looking into as a result. I mean, being one that tracks this, there does seem to be a correlation. Like there's so many times that we get something like Big Mama going crazy on the far side. We see them. Then it's on the limb, it's going nuts. And then it transits through here, and it's like, oh, yeah, nothing. Everything goes down. And then right as it gets to the limb again, it just starts going crazy again. And so I don't know what that could be. I mean, there's a few like hypotheses. Um, I mean, you have to think that you have to think about magnetic fields if you want to get to a hypothesis that is based in science. I mean, in regards to what you said, is there something protecting? I don't know. If there's some force protecting Earth, it's not in the three-dimensional sense, like some big spaceship coming by. This is like a completely different dimension where they're going in and just changing the actual reality of like the framework of reality. Um, if that's the case, but if we're talking about an actual physical mechanism, then perhaps it's related to Earth's magnetic field because we have the sun, we have Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and then Jupiter. Jupiter is all the way out at 5.2, by far the biggest planet, has the strongest magnetic field other than the sun, but it's at 5.2. And we're noticing Earth facing quiet. So we have to look at the Earth. Venus doesn't have a magnetic field. Venus is closer. She's about as massive, but she doesn't have a magnetic field. Mercury has a magnetic field about 1/10 the strength of Earth's. So it's quite a bit weaker. Mercury's very tiny. We're not talking about Mercury facing quiet, right? It's like Earth facing quiet. And so the Earth is close enough at 1 AU that perhaps there's some magnetic conduit or something. And by connecting to the sun, it just changes the solar flux dynamics such that those fields don't get so wound up and then explosive. Um, that's possible. I mean, Jupiter's magnetic field is quite a bit stronger than Earth's, but magnetic fields decay exponentially. So it's an inverse square law. So Earth's magnetic field at 1 astronomical unit it's the strongest magnetic field close to the sun. In this whole zone, it's the sun and then Earth in terms of magnetic fields that are notable until you want to kind of scale up. And so I would think that it has to do with some sort of magnetic field relationship, but maybe gravitationally, maybe Earth's gravity is just enough to kind of like cause things to simmer down. I don't know, but it's weird. It's definitely something I've noticed too.
And talking about Earth, one of the reasons I invited you on the channel, I was watching a video that you did a couple weeks ago, and you were talking about the Earth being a living being. Is the Earth a soul? Does the Earth have a soul, and it's an actual being that we live on?
I think so. I mean, I think anyone that is in nature a lot, I think we knew this a long time ago. And by we, I mean like everyone. It was just a way of like a fact of life. It wasn't like I made that video, I've made others too. And there are people that will comment like, you immediately discredited yourself when you said that Earth is conscious. It's like, well, then why are you conscious, right? Like, what makes you so special compared to Earth? Because if we look at consciousness as a result of all the different things that make up our body, I mean, consciousness is more than that. It's our spirit, right? We don't really know what consciousness is. But some of the best theories are that's based on vibrations. It's based on a whole bunch of different vibrations being nested within one another. And so basically you have just like this kind of pulsing frequency biofield type deal, like it's based on electromagnetism. These are some of the theories, which I find compelling. And so if it is based on like information and energy and frequency and vibration and resonance and all that, then the earth would be a super consciousness because we all live within the earth, and the earth has all its own frequencies and vibrations that are generated through its own processes. There's a great study that was done that looked at the scaling of the earth and a lightning strike compared to the size of the human skull and a neural spike, which is when a neuron does this big, it's called a spike. It depolarizes and shoots off its electrical charge basically. And that's what drives brain activity, right? All these different neural spikes. And they have the same scale ratio. Of course, the earth is much larger. Lightning strike is, you don't want to be hit by one. But when you scale the earth and its lightning strikes down to the size of a human skull, it's the same power ratios. And everything's the same, basically. It was really interesting. And so the earth is having 100 lightning strikes about every second. That could be 100 neural spikes happening in the brain every second. Like it's there. And there's so much more than just lightning strikes. There's all these other things, electric currents in the ground. And there's like 30 different types of electric currents that exist in the earth, more than that. I mean, you can think of all the different rock layers. Some of them have porosity, right? So they have air gaps, but they're actually filled up with saline water, which then flows and swishes around. That creates electric currents. The moon is rotating around, causing these tidal bulges and the tides and all this stuff, and that's changing those electric currents. So you have more activity on the earth than you can even hold in your brain at any single given moment. And to say the earth is not conscious is, I think it's exactly like Avatar, except we don't have the cool little squid thing. That's the only thing we don't have.
Or the bright colors, the glowing, plants, everything like that. That was beautiful in Avatar.
Yeah, yeah.
So, if Earth is a consciousness, is it like a highly evolved consciousness of like ours, or is it something completely different?
Um, yeah, and that's also where the anthropomorphism comes in, where we make everything human. It's beyond human consciousness, and so I think we could start to kind of get to it a little bit by kind of thinking, but I don't think the earth is sitting there stewing in its thoughts like, oh man, I should have said that, right? I think the earth is kind of beyond that. Um, but we see different consciousness with different animals and creatures, and you could have three little toads and they'll have different personalities, right? And my consciousness is, I think, probably a little bit more complex than a toad's, but doesn't mean the toad doesn't have consciousness and doesn't mean that it's insignificant. Um, for that toad, it's what it is. And so we are part of the earth consciousness. All of us are part of it. So we are one segment to that. And so there is a part of earth consciousness in my framework of belief. There is one segment of earth consciousness that is very human. And that's probably the part that we connect to more. That's where the collective consciousness of humanity blends into earth consciousness. There's probably, this kind of gradient there. It's like the river and then the stream meets, and where they're meeting, the water is all kind of shimmery and stuff because one's fresh and one's sailing. That's probably kind of what that's like. At least I can imagine that, right? But earth consciousness is much more vast. I imagine it's very much like I guess like a supercomputer where there's, not just one thought in your mind, but a billion at once, all interacting, and it's probably very imaginative too. I bet the Earth is very much in an imaginative realm, and only occasionally checks in on the reality. And sometimes when she does, she's like, "Whoa, I'm not sure I like this deforestation." um, and so I think when we see these larger Earth shifts, that's probably when Earth really does a very much like her own little reality check. Like, where am I actually right now? Is everything good? Are we good? Um, but yeah, I mean, I can't really. I'm just a creature of the earth just as much as you are. So Anything that I say is just me channeling, you could say, and who's to say it's accurate or not?
I find it very interesting because I've heard people who've had near-death experiences say that the Earth has a consciousness, and all the planets have a consciousness. So, expanding on that, say the Earth has a consciousness, and Venus and Mars, they each have their own consciousness. Then is the solar system a separate, larger consciousness, and then so on and so forth as we go out further?
Yeah, that's what I believe. I think it's all just consciousness nested within itself, and it's fractal in nature and bidirectional. I mean, for example, we know that our microbiome influences us deeply. If you have not only physically, I mean, people will get like FMTs, right? So someone's not healthy, right? And let's say they've done this with people that are, let's say, like obese, and they put in the microbiome of someone that's young, fit, and healthy. All of a sudden, they lose like 50 pounds or just these crazy results. And sometimes their personality changes, the depression goes away. That's one of the big ways they use FMT therapy, um, is for depression and kind of psychiatric disorders. And those are just little bacteria and like just all the little bugs kind of in our gut. And I think it's kind of the same for us. I think we are the microbiome of the earth. And so we're quite influential and we cause these outward effects. But if the earth decides to do a fast, she will do a fast and condition, all of a sudden when you stop eating, there's no more nutrients coming in. And your body switches to repairing and rebuilding and regenerating everything. And so at what point will the earth decide to do that if she wants to? I don't know, but that's kind of how I see it. And so we are, for example, like the microbiome for the earth. Well, maybe all the planets and the stars in the galaxy are the microbiome for the galaxy. And then the galaxies interacting with different galaxies very much so. Like right now, Milky Way and Andromeda are having a conversation like in 4.5 billion years, we will merge, right? Um, but there's trillions of galaxies. And so those are all the microbiome of the universe. And maybe there's trillions of universes. And so it's just like, kind of fractal out like this. So who's to say one is bigger than the other? Maybe the universe just kind of loops back in and the universe is actually inside me. I mean, who knows? Maybe each quark is a universe.
Yeah, that's a concept in spirituality, is that the universe is actually inside you and you're kind of projecting it into a movie screen, which, that's all a analogy, but it's interesting to think about. And then I've read, I don't know if you've heard of solipsism, where no matter where you look is where you're going to find things, right? There's no edge
Mm,
of the universe, because once you reach the edge of what we can see currently, then your consciousness is going to create something beyond that edge. And we can
mm,
go backwards too and say the stronger our microscopes, the more we're going to be able to go smaller and smaller, that maybe quarks aren't the smallest thing, that we're going to see something smaller inside a quark with a stronger microscope. And it's all has to do with our consciousness, as our consciousness is creating the universe as we look at it. What is your opinion about that?
I think that makes a lot of sense. I also think it correlates really nicely with the idea of there being multiple timelines and that you actually never really die. You're always just jumping from one to another. And so you could be given a certain experience and let's say like the earth, like an earthquake happens in California, and all of a sudden it's like game over. I see the building collapse on me, but then I wake up from a dream in the next one. I'm like, wow, that was so real. And it's like, well, it was, and your soul just decided to book it out to go to the next one. And so I can see that also being very congruent with that idea of, wherever you're searching, you'll find something and it'll mirror back to you what it is that you're looking for. Um, and what you're searching for is often going to be influenced by just the energies at play. What has your attention and interest? Well, then it'll kind of, manifest that play box for you. And so that's where spirituality gets really interesting, where there's, a lot of like yogis and Indian gurus and mystics saying like you should just completely avoid the play box and just do absolutely nothing and see what happens. Um, But right now with the Great Awakening, it's just people coming to more consciousness. But we see people also coming out of consciousness too, very clearly because of phones, constantly captivating attention. People walking across the street, looking at their phone. It's like you should look for the cars instead. Like we just actually let's actually just sit there and analyze that situation. You are crossing a road with cars on it going 30 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour. What is the most highly conscious thing for you to do? It's for you to stop, look here, look there, and then cross. But people aren't doing that. And they're looking at information, they're reading, they're doing mental things, doesn't mean they're conscious. Mental activity and consciousness are not one and the same. So there's actually a big sleeping happening right now too, because the polarities are building. That's what it seems to me. It seems that there's an increasing polarity, consciousness, sleepiness. And so a lot of us are in the awakening group, but there's also plenty of people that are in the sleepy group. And they're becoming less conscious. And so that's why I hope to reach a lot of those people as well.
Yeah, you're right. I think the phones take us away from who we truly are, our consciousness. We do fall asleep as soon as we get on our phone. I don't think it's possible to sit there and be conscious, completely conscious, and be scrolling on like social media or something like that, where you get lost in other people's stories. And that's one of the things I try to do is I try to remind myself to be conscious. There's a word I like to use, lucidity.
Mm,
Um, Being lucid, not in a dream in this life, which may be a dream for all I know.
yeah.
And I think that it was interesting that you brought up the dream, like parallel universes and dreams. And have you ever had a dream where you wake up and you were like, oh my gosh, that felt so real? Or like, I had a dream one time that I woke up and I mourned the family that I had in my
Mm.
dream because they didn't exist. They were in my dream. Has that ever happened to you?
Not the family one, but definitely hyper vivid dreams that are basically more real than like real life. Though it's different, but yeah, just the sensation is heightened. Like your ability to like feel it is greater. Um, yeah, I've had precognition dreams where I had the dream and 3 months later, 4 months later, it came true. Like basically by the T. It's like kind of weird. Like, well, I don't know how to explain that, but it happened, and it wasn't just some basic thing like, oh, I put the spoon in the fork part of the silverware tray. Like, no, it was like a very specific thing that occurred that came true. And like, there was another precog dream I had too, but dreams are very interesting. The astral realm, how we connect to it, I think that's where we start to go into these different states of reality. I think my kind of framework is that we actually live in all of them simultaneously. And so, where is our consciousness centered? And so, right now it's centered here, but we kind of make an obligation to go to the astral realm every night, and our consciousness goes preferentially there and inhabits that body instead of this body. But not everyone dreams, right? Some people don't dream at all. They don't want to dream. And so that's also limiting their consciousness, limiting their processing of things. And so, I watch the sun and the earth and all the different energetic things that occur because I think it's fascinating. I just love learning. I'm very curious. B, it helps to give us a sense, an idea of what's happening now, the quality of the energy, and also to look forward, especially with astrology. We're like this. This is like a lead time of like 4 days, right? It's like we know Big Mama is going to be here in 4 days, unless she just totally goes away, right? So we have maybe in 4 days you can check and we can put a probability that it's going to do a big flare. And then it takes another 3, 4 days for that to reach her, something like that. So it gives us a bit of a heads up. Astrology gives you a really big heads up. Um, but it's more than just that, though. It's also just like helping with this consciousness evolution journey. Um, and so all of them work really well together. And I find that really fascinating.
So I want to get back to astrology for a minute because I am fascinated by astrology, but every time I go to sit down to try to figure out something about astrology, I can't figure it out. It's very confusing to me. Do you have any resources or something that you can recommend to kind of break it down, make it like astrology for dummies?
Well, everyone's different. Um, and so what, like my way of learning it isn't necessarily going to work for everyone else, but I'm very much just a sponge. I think I do think that kind of innately humans are sponges. I mean, look at a baby. Every baby is a sponge, right? There's not a single baby that's not a sponge. And so you just have to kind of engage the baby brain and just that kind of like that curiosity and awe. Let that just be the emotion that you feel, right? Or just interest. Just keep it at even just like interest, and then just let it filter and filter and filter in. And so, I mean, I did a lot of studying, a lot of reading articles, things of this nature, like going to Astro Wiki, and I have different books. I mean, I'm going through this one now. This is like the only book that we have from the ancients in terms of astrology from the Roman period, but it touches on the Greeks, the Egyptians, Babylonians. Um, but I started really just by just letting it come in, and not like it's not like I had quizzes or deadlines or anything. It's not like I had anything that was forcing me to, oh, I have a chart reading, I need to be prepared. It was just pure, just letting it come in. It's like being in a foreign country and just letting the language just flow into you. And then when it came time, when my interest was enough that I wanted to start learning specifics, I already heard all these things so many times in the background that, oh, what's a trine? Okay, well, a trine is this and it means that. And it just kind of clicked. And so my way of studying was just finding good teachers who have good long form content. And I would just put it on while cleaning or put it on while cooking, or sometimes I just wanted to rest for an hour. I just lay down and put it on and just have something light. But if I fell asleep, it doesn't matter, right? Like it's all going to get filled in eventually. And that's how I learned astrology up to this point. And now I'm doing a little bit more of a rigorous study. And I think teaching others is the best way to learn as well. But yeah, everyone's different. So I wouldn't, if you go at it, here's the thing, is you have different signs, planets, aspects, right? Houses. That gets a lot of people tripped up right from the beginning because they have to learn 4 different things immediately. And there's 12 signs, there's 12 houses, right? There's all the different planets and points. It gets really wild. And if you look at that and try to like get it all at once, it's not going to work. You just have to slowly go at it.
And tell me more about the planetary resonances. You've done a lot of research into this and put something together to help other people understand it. What is it, and how can this benefit our lives?
So the Planetary Resonances e-course is the first of 3 courses that I'm making as part of a larger course, you could say. So it's like a module. And so the larger course is the Energy, Frequency, and Vibration Master Course. And I hope to get it done in the next 12 months. But this Planetary Resonances e-course took a long time, though I think that's going to be the biggest section. But basically, it's just an exploration of frequency. And so I decided to start at the lowest frequency part of the spectrum, because that's where all the planetary orbits are, right? Earth, 365 days to do 1 solar revolution, versus the foundational mode of the Schumann resonances is pulsing about 8 times a second. So 1 pulse per year is much lower frequency than 1 pulse per second. And so it was really just, it wasn't a course I made on astrology. It was a course I made on frequency and ultra low frequencies. That's why they're planetary resonances, right? Because you have Schumann resonances, which are just these vibrations that exist. Planetary resonances are just the vibrations that the planets create. So astrology is a part of that, but it's not the dominant only component, right? It's what are the actual frequencies of the planet. That's their orbital cycle, but also their synodic cycles. For example, Jupiter and Saturn meeting up every 20 years. That starts a 20-year cycle, but then they have longer cycles where they switch elements, and then an 800-year cycle when they finally come back to their starting place. And so I just really started chipping away at that part of the lowest frequency part of the spectrum. The lowest frequencies let you look back the furthest, and they also let you look forward the furthest. And so you can better understand yourself, your health, and your wellness in your day-to-day, minute by minute, by understanding things like Schumann resonances and, let's say, like the rotation of Earth, right? Day-night cycles, your circadian rhythm, hormonal balance, all that. That will be in the Earth resonances course. But if you want to understand what's going to happen 50 years from now or 500 years from now, or have an idea of it, or to see how the past has influenced where we are now, then you have to study the planetary resonances. Um, and so to study that, you need more than just astrology. You also need the science, like the actual dynamics of these planets as they're rotating through space, and other new planets have been found, dwarf planets. And then also the mythology. What are these planets and things connected to energetically? What's the stories behind that we've been passing down for like thousands of years, right? And how do we see these archetypes, these archetypal energies? How do we see these playing out in real life, past, present, perhaps in the future? And so that's what the course is about. And it gives you a really solid footing in terms of understanding your reality, your situation, what you have ahead of you. Because it can't be individualized, right? I can't have every single person's answer in that course, but you'll be able to take the course, for example, and be able to better understand your own situation and look at your chart and things. But it's not, again, it's not an astrology course, but it helps you to understand things like solar activity too, because I mean, we have Pluto in Aquarius right now. Last time we had Pluto in Aquarius, we had the strongest solar cycle that we've ever recorded. That was back, I said again, like near the American Revolution. I think it was solar cycle 3. And so you see that Aquarius, Pluto's now entering into Aquarius again. You can start to think, well, maybe this solar cycle is going to be a little bit stronger than they think it is, right? Because most scientific researcher is not going to be looking at Pluto, but someone with an astrology mindset can look there and be like, okay, that's going to have some effect. We don't know how much, but it's going to have some effect. So that's where learning this stuff is useful, as it applies to stock markets, as it applies to a whole bunch of things, right? You can use those energies to your advantage.
We had a big stock market plunge yesterday. Do you think this
Yeah,
had anything to do with it? What's going on in the solar system?
I think so. I mean, the astrology of August is pretty wild, and we had. I mean, this is like this big Saturn Jupiter square, and there's other stuff too. Um, Pluto at the 29th degree of Capricorn, and like the 0 and first degree of Aquarius seems to be connected to financial markets. It's more than just that too, though. But yeah, I mean, I think it's connected. There's a whole bunch of things, but I think it's more of a derivative of some other factors that are at play. But it's also a fear thing, right? Let's get people afraid again. Like my friend called me up and she was all anxious and worried about it. And I had to, she's like, "Aren't you freaked out?" I'm like, "No, I'm chilling." And so that calmed her down. The fact that I was calm calmed her down. But some of the powers that be that want you sleepy also want you afraid. And so if that's a lever that they can pull it, do it. Um, but in terms of it being like the end all be all crash, I mean, who knows? But I don't think so.
What about the Lionsgate? I'm hearing a lot about Lionsgate on 8/8.
Hmm.
What does that signify?
Well, Lionsgate is it's one of these things that becomes a little bit of a echo chamber, a little bit. I mean, I don't want to like take away from anybody, but I mean, we saw this with the stock market crash a couple of days ago. All of a sudden, tons of videos came out on it, right? It's like when everyone's beating the drum, then you grab yours and start beating it too, right? And so it's the same thing with like Lions Gates and certain portals. It's like one person made a video on it and they have 500,000 subs, and so it does very well. And everyone's like, oh man, maybe I can get a little bit on that. And so they make a video, but there is something to it. There is something to, I believe, I study numerology quite a bit. I don't incorporate it much in my videos, but I do look at numbers a lot. I see repeating numbers all the time. My sister was born on August 8th, 1988. So she is 8888 in her birthday. So, this is really just a reminder to like kind of embrace your Leo energy, your Leo qualities, embrace the energy of the sun. We're at solar maximum during Leo season with Lionsgate, and to remember, it's kind of like a call to remember our supreme divine manifesting ability, and that this is a good time to do that. Like right now is the time for things to grow, and then fall is the time for us to harvest. Um, and so it's good that there's a lot of buzz on it. But maybe this year it's tainted is not the right word, but maybe this year it's colored a little bit by, there's going to be some mega event that happens on 8/8. I mean, maybe, but maybe not. Last year we had the crazy Lahaina fires in Maui that happened on 8/8. That was weird. So we could see some stuff kind of initiate on 8/8, but I think it's more of a spiritual manifestation portal rather than, oh, we're going to see some big thing in our reality on that day. But again, who knows? But it's just like a reminder and a call for you to embrace your sovereignty and to like embrace your innate confidence that we all have.
Oh, that's great advice. And I love your outlook on things. You're not over the top or, pulling those levers like you talked about. You're just calm and collected, letting everyone know to be prepared for whatever, but don't be afraid. So I love the cool collectedness of your message.
Oh, drink spring water. Drink spring water. I know it's an extra expense, but water is the base necessity besides air. So it's the cheapest expense. My life changed so much for the better when I incorporated spring water. Filter water does not do it. Tap water is the worst. So if you're not doing that, this is my little universal poke to you to start drinking good spring water. It'll make a world of difference for your health, your gut health, really for your gut health. All those chemicals your gut does not like, but also for your brain and just your ability to connect to spirit. And so, for example, I have things like tea blends that I sell. I have spirituality, which is 4 different herbs. It's blue lotus flower, mugwort, chamomile, passion flower. You can mix those 4 together and enhance your dream state and your ability to meditate and have kind of psychic experiences with like a sound healing, let's say. And so I have that on my website. It'll be back in stock actually in about a week or so. But I don't mention it necessarily for that. I mention it because like you can use those things to enhance like kind of your connection to spirit and everything. But the biggest thing you can do is like drinking water, like good water. So, I mean, I really don't have anything. That's why I just looked at the bottle and decided to start talking about spring water because it really is so important. I sometimes like to go back to basics, but I guess just in general, for anyone that's watching this recent, like when this drops, August has some pretty big astrology to it. We have Jupiter and Saturn in a square. And so Jupiter's in Gemini, Saturn is in Pisces. Mars will be playing with Jupiter at the same time. So really, it's a Saturn, Jupiter, Mars square. And we'll have Venus participating in that in Virgo. So the square in the mutable energies, square is kind of like fixed, like things are building and they're kind of tense, but it's in the mutable energy. So like, where is it going to kind of pop out? Where's the energy really going to like just kind of suddenly explode out? And then for the full moon in Aquarius, we have the sun and moon, sun's in Leo, moon's in Aquarius. That is going to be square to Uranus in Taurus. And so we have 2 of these crosses basically active at the same time within a span of like 3 days from like August, you can say like August 17th to 21st, if you just kind of want to give it a little bit of a cushion. That may be kind of a wild time. Some of the effects of that may be delayed into later in August. We're already seeing some of that come in now. But that is why people are saying August is kind of wild. Like it looks like it's going to be wild. It already has been wild. And so just keep in mind that these energies are always temporary. They come in, they come out. At some point, I'm not going to be able to point at the sun and show a whole bunch of sunspots. It's going to be completely empty, and my solar reports are going to be super boring at some point in like 2030 or something. Um, and so, having a little bit of detachment, finding happiness in very simple things. I think these are some of the real lessons and truths that we need to be sharing, because they're what I've experienced myself, that have made a big, profound impact on my life.
You mentioned spring water, so I just have a quick question about that. Is it just any spring water from the store, or is there a kind of spring water? Should we buy it from the store in plastic?
That's the biggest problem is the fact it comes packaged in plastic. Um, I mean, there's some places that sell in glass, but unless you're really rich, it's exorbitant in terms of the price. But luckily, I mean, they package them in plastic and then they put them in boxes and they're not exposing it to heat, so you're really not getting much. And then, the problem with the single-use plastic is that if you keep using it and then you keep in the car and the car is hot, then it starts to really leach out. Um, but yeah, that's like the one downside to it. A good brand. I'm not sure you can get it everywhere in the States, but at least for like the West Coast, Crystal Geyser, they have awesome, awesome water. Um, if you're in Iceland, you can just drink right from the tap because they go straight down. It's the best water I've ever had. You can drink from the streams and the rivers in Iceland. If you have you ever been to Iceland?
No, but I want to go.
You should go. Anyone that's spiritual will like Iceland. It's a very mystical place. And And so, I mean, you want to check the source of the spring. But in general, if it's coming from a spring, it's coming out from depth, and you want it somewhere that's not polluted. So somewhere in the mountains, so you're not getting all like the fertilizer, pesticide, like pollutants and other stuff, or like DDT from the past, or these benzene, different compounds and stuff. And so if you do that, it's also probably good to probably, drink the water that's fairly local to you, right? Um, because, and also like eat the food that's local to you. But yeah, I mean, in general, if like there's a point where you have to turn your brain off, right? It's not like I could get this and then also send the water in to get sampled and get the full report and everything. If you want something you can just do, turn to something, just a habit, and then turn your brain off for the rest to focus on other things. Just getting good spring water is much better than just turning your brain off and putting your cup under the tap, because that has all the fluoride and chloride and all these other things in it that shut this all down. Um, and just building up our ability to use discretion. I think that's really important. Not taking everything at face value.
Yeah, excellent advice. I love that. Not taking everything at face value,
Don't
not
take anything
getting
at face
hurt.
value.
Like everything's not personal, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But if my viewers, you have this amazing YouTube channel, and I want to make sure, probably a lot of my viewers are already subscribers, but if not, where can they find, or what is the name of your YouTube channel?
I think do I have it on my screen? It's right there at Stefan Burns,
I didn't even
is the
notice it was
YouTube.
there the whole time.
I forgot about it too. And then my Instagram, I don't really post like mystic stuff, just kind of life stuff, but Stefan Burns official. But yeah, happy to have any of you that come on over, watch a video or two. My format works best when you kind of stay up to date on them. So you get kind of the full download. But I know time is limited, and yeah, you offer a great resource with your channel. I mean, you said you started 6 months ago and you're already at over 10,000. That's insane. So you're doing something right. So congrats to you. And yeah, interesting conversation. I'm glad we went all over the place. So thank you, Tia.
Yeah, it was interesting. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you very much. And if you had one message that you wanted the audience to take away from our conversation, just one thing you wanted them to grasp onto, what would it be?
That happiness is created in our mind. And so the universe is constantly presenting us opportunities that are multifaceted. And so it's our choice on how we interpret those opportunities. First, you often have to walk towards it. You see it, but you have to walk towards it. And then how you interpret it is completely up to you. And so a lot of people in this community, the awakening community, one of the problems is that they've been told by a lot of different people that it just happens to them, right? That's one of the big lies that's been sold. It's like, all you have to do is just watch my videos and it'll just happen to you. No, you will have the opportunity. You may be more conscious to see the opportunity, but you got to walk towards it and then you got to pick it up, right? It still requires, universe wants equal participation. It'll do half and then you got to do the other half. That's what I believe. And so as it relates to happiness, when you see these opportunities, like, because a lot of people aren't happy now, a lot of people are not happy. When you see these opportunities for very just simple, pure, innocent happiness, I think those are the ones that are the most valuable. Um, and it can be very simple. I mean, I have a very quick stories that when I was in Germany, I was walking everywhere. I was there for a month when I was making this course, the Planetary Resonances course, back in April and May. And I was, kind of getting tired of having to walk everywhere. It was raining at times, and I just happened to find a bike laying like in the park against a bush, and I was just so happy. All of a sudden, it had wheels. And then 2 weeks later, when I left, I just put it back on the bush. But, it wasn't this happiness that was derived from some other person or, having to go here to do this or something. It was literally just me finding a bike, but it just made that entire rest of my trip. I don't know. It's just like such a base low lift and it's so pure and innocent. And so I think finding happiness and things like that is really key. Not happiness in some potion or something they're smoking or some mushroom. Like all those things can be cool and fun, but like just pure simple happiness. Finding a really good chocolate bar you like, or just this bike or finding happiness with the sunset every evening, right? Just make sure you try to see the sunset every evening. Simple things like that are the absolute best.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much, Stefan. This has been quite enjoyable for me. I learned a lot from you, and thank you for your channel as well. I learned a lot there.
And thank you so much. Blessings to you and blessings to everyone that's watching. And yeah, we'll continue it on. Let's go, August, Leo season.
Thank you for being here. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing if you enjoy near-death experiences and other spiritually transformative stories. It helps the algorithm know that this information is useful and push it out to more people. And that's the goal, to get as many people to know that we are eternal spiritual beings and that we never die. Our bodies might die, but our essence will never die. And I want people to live with less fear. Let's all spread the word. Like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that little notification bell so you get all the notifications when my videos post. Thank you for all of your support. I'm sending love to you.